Hello and good morning, everyone. We will be starting the fourth day. Today is the fourth day of the assessor training workshop. So I think Shiva has already joined. Shiva, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So we have 1 minute to go, but we have few more to join. I think 5, 6 more people are left to join, but we can start in 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. So day 4. So we will start off the day today. As I said, the focus will be on trying to one is go through some of the points, whatever you have learned, plus also on the clarifications. Then we will also try to get into the scoring portion of it, mainly on the enablers portion yesterday, whatever we did. And then we will also try to have a small discussion on whatever you have done in terms of the results as well. Maybe the results scoring, we will try to take it up later. Plus, there are a few more couple of additional activities also that we will try to do maybe today online, not offline, so that we are able to get a much better hang on the subject. So anybody would want to just recap some key points what you learned yesterday from the key factors, plus also something on the consensus, plus any other points also that require clarification? You can open up your mics and you can share.
You have to get a COVID test and you have to quarantine for such and such period and some undertaking and some.
Shiva, this is just my observation. I felt that writing results were far easier than assessing the results was easier than assessing the enablers. I felt at least that way. I don't know if everybody.
No, it is true. Why? Because what happens is, results are always objective.
Correct. And numbers and everything, data is right in front of you. Like dig too much deep and possibly.
That is true. I mean, somebody is speaking in the background. Can you kindly, those of you who are, maybe can you mute, please? So yeah, Mujtaba, what you said is right. One is results, are always objective. It does not create too much of a confusion because numbers are what they are. And whereas in the enablers, the challenge is to understand even the trying to go deeper into the attributes. It is very difficult to explain everything in the document also. There are a few things that you tend to assume. But whereas in results, since they are what they are, there is no assumption whatsoever. whether it is a trend or whether it is a target or a comparison or whether somebody is presented it or not. That makes it a little bit easier to do. You are absolutely right. Bang on target. Results are much more easier to assess than the enablers. That is right. Yes, please. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I feel that yes, it would have been easier. Then one had to go through the entire report in order to do justice to the results, because as we had discussed yesterday, that if you are looking at things beyond audit, you need to go through the entire report to see whether the applicant has looked out on anything which they might have mentioned in other sections. So I had to go through all the sections in order to see whether there's something which is there in other section which can be mentioned in the results OPL. So the work was more than the strategy part.
You're right. Because it is not that the applicant has not put it across well. While generally there is a result section wherein we need to put up most of the key results over there. But many a time, because of the flow and because of the criterion part, for doing justice to that particular sub-criterion or that question when we are trying to write it, it might be more appropriate for us to put the result also over there sometimes. But a good practice is to have at least 80 to 90% of the results in the result section, and also have around maybe even around 10 to 15% in case the situation calls that for trying to put across a particular point more effectively. If there is a need for us to put in the results in some other section, that's absolutely fine. Like if we see the 6B section what BPCL had written, there are quite a lot of data, I would not call them as data points, but actually they're all process related stuff. There are many things to do with diversity, to do with inclusion. There are many of those things. Those tables, had they been put across in the relevant places, then it would have made our job much more easier. So generally the logic goes by like this. Whenever we are trying to whether do an assessment or whether write the report, whatever it is, we have to look at the enablers as well as the results, both of them, in order to make sense out of the entire thing. When you are, let us say, when you are assessing results, yesterday when you did the activity on 6B, it would tell you that the last one, especially on the OPEL, it says that you look into the last one, the cause. So if you are to really tick that box of cause as green, then you must have gone through all the enablers. If you don't go through, then you will really not get the confidence that yes, this company has the processes. That's the reason why the results are good. So it is imperative that you will have to go through the entire document. And that is also one of the reasons as to why the assessors, when we tell them to do the assessment, or else the assessment would have been very much easier. Ara 4 log hai, divide that entire criteria into 3-4 parts and everybody does one. Then you are not getting a full picture of the entire assessment. Then you are only trying to look at silos. That is exactly the reason as to why we say all assessors would need to go through the assessment or need to do the assessment of all the 6 criteria, but they will only be leading a particular one that is more for trying to groom themselves as good potential assessors who would be able to gel into every team, build in that element of personality, trying to speak to all the people, etc. That is more only of a personality development part, what we address. But otherwise, yes, you need to do the entire thing, and that's absolutely right what you said. Yes, please.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, good morning, sir. This is Anupriya.
Yeah, go ahead, Anupriya.
Yeah. So, just an observation. Am I audible?
There was a little bit of a disturbance.
Hello?
You can restart once again.
Hello. Okay, sir. One of my clarification is that isn't it a practice that can we also write the cause in a small sentence or a bullet points with the results itself? For example, if I'm giving the result of some key factor, I write it in a box, 1 or 2 bullet points points of the causes or the new initiatives that I've taken, or due to which process it has resulted to, which will give it a more clear picture?
Well, we don't advocate writing the causes because what happens is the causes, if you are looking at, there are many causal factors. Like let us say when you are trying to talk about the company's profits moving up. Let's say the profitability of the company is high and as well as the revenues are also moving up. Now that may not be attributable only to the training and the competency of the people. It has also got many different causal factors. So due to which it may not be appropriate for us to write down the bullets in the cause, especially when you are getting into the result criteria. Why it is always recommended that it should be just at the background is once you start writing about the causal factors, then somebody else might attribute it to something different. Then again, there will be a issue saying that you are saying that is attributed. Actually, this is not what we meant, or this is not how it needs to be seen. It leads into unnecessary ones. We always believe that currently in the scheme of things, the one is the assessors have their own point of view, which we do respect. That is the reason why we don't want you to write the causes, especially in the bullet forms, when you're trying to write the statement. And also the other disadvantage of trying to write too much is then the focus will be lost. Focus meaning to say that we are trying to convey something on that OFI. If there are many points that are coming in, then that will muddy the waters. And again, you will go back to that particular enabling criterion. Somebody will put up some other point. So it leads to a lot of confusion, due to which generally we say that whenever you are trying to ascertain the cause and the effect relationship, it is always better that let it be there in the background. Let the assessors have I would say, a consensus that yes, this has been caused by an enabling approach, and that is good enough. But for your reference, you can make those notes, but maybe not in the formal feedback report. Yes, please. Anybody else? Any other points?
Gone through three days of workshop, sir. This is Rakesh here.
Yeah, Rakesh, go ahead.
Doing all these exercises, now we are better placed to understand that the model is a holistic thing, and we should not look at it as individual boxes or silos. Approach without deployment is not a strength, and then results, which results are being caused by those deployments and approaches, and which results are important. This has to be seen in a holistic this thing. And then having undergone these exercises and reading it again and again, now we are better placed to understand that why it is a holistic thing and why we should not look at these boxes individually or in silos.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just one point in when you are going out for an assessment, I don't know whether I spoke about this or not over the last 3 days. It is always better, please remember, when the assessors are coming into your particular department. Let us say you are you are leading the L&D practice, or probably you are leading the engagement practice or the compensation benefits, etc. Whenever you are trying to present something to the assessors, do not present only something connected to your own domain. Because I'm trying to bring up this point since Rakesh spoke about that silo approach. Now, let us say you are the head or you are the process lead for Comp and Ben. Now, please remember that when you are also a leader, because you are also an important part of the entire wheel of NTPC, when you're trying to look at that you are heading Comp and Ben. So there are certain things in your own vertical, and that too in an organization like NTPC, which is so very huge with so many people over there. So you need to explain some traits of leadership and try to explain and never impinge into somebody else's. What I'm only trying to say is, during your presentation, ultimately when we say excellence is holistic. All of you will need to play a part in all those 6 boxes. Maybe your part will be a little bit more in a few boxes, in few of the others it could be lesser. Like, to take the same example, since you are a leader, what are some of the things that you are trying to do in terms of sharing some vital communication as a leader within your team for Comp and Ben? Or maybe if you are an engagement lead or something, how is it that your activity or the process, whatever you are looking at, how is it connected to the strategy? How is it that maybe when you are saying Comp and Ben, it has also got an element of performance? How is it that you are trying to enable that culture of high performance? How is it that you have built the Comp and Ben strategies aligned to the culture of high performance? Similarly, what are some of the lead and lag indicators, whatever you are tracking? In fact, it would even be worthwhile for you to take the assessment team through your own department's MRM. That will also give plenty of confidence to the assessors that yes, these guys know their job. And there is always a difference between an audit and an assessment. On day one itself, we started that. In an audit, typically you will always be managing assessors, the auditors, saying that chalo wo ek ghanta aayega, let me see, let 40 minutes, let me talk, let him somehow try to kill his time so that he will have a very, very less time. ठीक है, now I have managed the auditor. But लेकिन assessment में ऐसा नहीं होता. You should never, if you are trying to manage the assessor's time, actually you are doing more harm to your organization and to your process itself. If an assessor has slotted 1 hour of discussion with you, ideally out of the 1 hour, you should try to maybe maximum whenever you are, I'm sure that in any assessment you will certainly make a presentation. Nothing wrong in making a presentation. You must make a presentation. I'm not saying no. Please try to present something new that is not there in the document. Because the document has certain limitations. It has only 3 or 4 pages in which many of the processes would have been written about. So obviously you would not have the time or the bandwidth to explain some of the finer details. So during that 20 or 25 minutes, whatever you get initially, try to give them the finer details of that particular process. Try to run them through a departmental dashboard or probably a MRM, or in case if you have a wall wherein you have all your KPIs put up, try to walk them through that. That will give them that sort of a confidence that yes, this particular function knows what is it that they're trying to do. And just like your traditional ISO 9000, also try to build in the CPOC connection. That is, for your particular process, as I said, you might be in recruitment, PMS, engagement, or in whichever, or maybe in corporate communications, you might be in whichever function, whatever it is. Who are the other functions with whom you are also interfacing or you are interacting? How are you providing value to them? What is it that, who is your supplier? Who are the, I would say, the people who give you the inputs for your process? How do you engage with them? How do you keep your own customers happy? The people who are the recipients of your services. If you have testimonials, if you have data, please share all that. And when I say share something new, it doesn't mean that it should be totally different. It should be linked. But in the document, what you have shown was a trailer. But here from the trailer, actually build on that, try to go a little bit more into depth so that they know that these people have segmented data, and try to explain about the process so that they know that yes, this process is really robust. Then you can explain something about benchmarking. How is it that, what are some of the improvements, what you have done? Whom is it that you are trying to benchmark? These things, even though they may not be in the document, they will certainly be appreciated and your score is also likely to go up. And out of that 1 hour, provide at least a decent 50% of the time for asking questions. Because the assessment team will have many questions. Now, just now, yesterday, you remember when we went through these, the activity, whatever you had done, at least each one of you had around three questions each, 3 or 4 OFIs each. Now, if we are a team of 4 assessors, if there are 6 criterion, out of the 6, maybe in the results there might be many more questions. If we have got 4 or 5 OFIs, so 5 criterion, matlab you will already have close to around 25 or close to around 30 questions. If you are taking results, it might even go into 60 or 70. So it may not be possible for you physically in the site to go through all the 70. So what you must also do during the site visit is, whatever questions you have got, you must always prioritize them into high, medium and low. Because you have a time of 3 days, make sure that all the high priority questions must be answered mandatorily, or else your scoring will be terribly impacted. All the high priority questions 100% should be site visited. That is, you must have sought clarifications, you must have sought data, you must have walked through that process. Medium priority, whatever questions are there, at least 70% of them should be cleared. It is quite possible that that question you may not be able to ask because you are not going into that particular that process, or you are not meeting that process head. That is what you need to do when you do your debriefing activity in the evening with your other assessor colleagues. You should say, अच्छा कल तुम इस डिपार्टमेंट में जा रहा हो, ये मेरा 3-4 questions है, please पूछ लो. Today I was there in this particular function, I was asking about these questions, this is what they said. Tomorrow, since you are going over there, so please make sure to clear this question also. So it is, please don't think that it is a job of the criterion lead to make sure that all those questions are all answered. No, it is a collective responsibility of the entire team. The entire team needs to be in touch, need to be interacting all the time to make sure that all the questions are answered. Then coming to the low, the last priority, high, medium, I said low. Low may still you may have around 20 questions. At least 50% of it you should be able to clear. 100% nahi hoga, but at least 50% of them we should be able to clear. Because what happens is, when you are trying to write down your strengths and OFIs, you might find at some point of time that aapke paas OFIs hai nahi. You can't manufacture OFIs and you can't do that. It is strictly prohibited. You cannot assume certain things and give an OFI. Agar ye nahi hai to ye hoga. If this is not there, this certainly will not be there. The benefit of doubt will always stay with the applicant. You can never assume anything. If you have not asked a particular question, if you have not sought a clarification, then you cannot put it as an OFI. You can write an OFI only when you have clear 100% conviction that I have asked this, they have not shown me the data, or they have not understood, or they do not have this process. Only then you can give an OFI. No assumptions. So during your 1 hour interaction, half an hour for explaining, taking them through, the remaining half an hour, the assessors will have their questions to ask. So you should actually prompt the assessors. If you are an excellent organization, if you have real good processes in place, give them good quality time. Let them ask whatever they want, so that they cannot come back and say that हमने आपको question पूछा लेकिन आपने बताया नहीं. If you don't answer that question and if you go on talking about whatever you are wanting to talk or whatever you would want to show, the assessors will say we asked this but we did not get any answer. You cannot say that नहीं आपने पूछा नहीं, time हो गया था तो आपने मांगा नहीं, हमने दिया नहीं. Those things will not hold good. So the lesson is, don't try to manage the assessors, because the assessors are people who have done multiple, there are 4 people, they would have done multiple assessments. They know how to get information out of the people. So they will have their own ways of trying to collect that information. So audit and assessments, both of them are different. Thanks, Rakesh. Thanks for that question. Maybe it took me a little bit away from that, but I think it was important that we try to share as to how do we go about making justice to the entire assessment process.
Sir, there was one realization which I was having yesterday by writing the OFIs for the results, is that I have been guiding myself from being prescriptive. as has been understood by the last 3 days training. But
Right.
while writing the OFIs for the results, what I thought that if had I been the applicant, then it would have been quite beneficial for me if the assessor would have been little bit prescriptive while giving the OFIs, that what could have been a better matrix for judging, for interpreting or for deciphering the result which the company or the applicants want to show. Maybe the company has those data, but they are not able to correlate it as a proper result for that particular enabler or for certain, for as a whole the result of the company's processes.
Like, can you take one example, Ruma?
So like when we say that supposedly we are giving an example of the result that one trend they have shown maybe of the accident, supposedly sir, for the accidents they have
Okay.
shown only one trend that there is when they're saying that the total man days lost has been this, that has been one trend. So when if we look at only that result which they have produced over there, it shows that the trend has not been good. Okay, there's been increase in the man days lost due to accident, but that is one definitely a very important point, which is a very strong indicator of not a very good result. But then there can be many other things that could have indicated towards some kind of improvement in the status of safety throughout the years, throughout the last 3 years. There could have been other indices which has not been included in the results part of the applicant's document. So as an assessor, if I have it in my mind, supposedly I have in my mind that these can be other matrices which can be given in the result area, which can better demonstrate the progress of the or the improvement in that particular area. Should I not be a little bit prescriptive in writing that?
Not a problem, Roma. Let me try to answer this. How you need to address this? You are right. There might be, there are two phases to this answer. Sometimes what happens is a few assessors tend to be a little bit, I would say, very, I'm not getting the correct word. Sometimes the assessors may have not seen too many companies, or they are comfortable with only one or two metrics that they know in their own organization. But the world will be seeing that through different lenses. So one is the assessor should guard against the possibility of trying to ask the company to show data in the way that they understand. That is one portion of it. Then coming to the second portion of what you asked, that the metric can be shown in a much better way, because because you strongly believe that the company, maybe you are also wanting to help the company, but at the same time the assessment guideline is asking you not to be prescriptive. So in that case, if you have that sort of a conviction, when you probe a little bit deeper with the process head or whoever is talking about it, if you come to a conclusion after the discussion that yes, these people now understand, or they realize that maybe there is a much better metric, then in that case at a few places you can use that. The other way is, if you are trying to go to a company that is relatively at a high degree of maturity, when we try to be prescriptive, then the assessee may not like it. For example, their top management might say, "Arey, aapko ye pehle socha nahi kya? Did you wait for so long for somebody else to tell you?" So generally what happens is, in those situations, I'm not saying in that situation, in many other situations, the assessment team will always be in touch with the applicant at all points of time. Let's say it could be during the lunch break, or it could be during the tea time, or maybe having an informal chat, or maybe in the evening when you are having maybe a get together, etc. During those times, as an assessor, the system allows you to share some informal thoughts, because ultimately this activity is all for improving the competitiveness of the organization. So that is what is the primary aim. So during the informal discussions, it happens, I would say more than 90% of the time, I repeat, more than 90% of the time, informally, the assessors, while discussing with the applicants, might say that, "Arey, there is a better way of measuring this. You please check out this particular site, or probably you can get in touch with this company, or many of the leading companies do this. Why don't you actually look at it? You can always share that. Many of those things may not come formally in the written report. In the written report, you might say that the organization might want to look at a different metric which is more appropriate so that they are able to capture this and this. So you are also giving a guidance, you are giving a prescription saying that the quality of the metric is not okay. But you are not saying which metric or what is the KPI or how it needs to be done. You are not trying to spoon feed them. That can always be done informally. And this does happen in an assessment at many different points of time. And also, if any of you get an opportunity to visit or do an assessment of a first time organization who is just getting into HR excellence, or maybe where the maturity of the company is very low, let us say they are in the 400 or 450 bracket. In those cases, it is okay to be a little bit prescriptive in many areas because the maturity of the company itself is low. So you need to tell them that, look, this approach is not good. Why don't you follow this? You might want to follow a KRA mechanism or a BSC or probably an X matrix. This will help you to do that. Or you can say that while you are only trying to look at this, why don't you use a tool such as a Kirkpatrick method for trying to look at effectiveness of training, etc. You can be a little bit prescriptive, but you need to be very sure about what is the level of maturity or the understanding of that company and where they are likely to be. If they are going to be in that 400 to 450 bracket, etc., you can afford to be a little bit prescriptive. But you need to be careful, especially when you are going to companies that are in that 550 plus bracket, because they may not like the assessors to be prescriptive. They will say, you just tell us what is that we are lacking, we will find our own way. So based on that, you can. Or there is also a third way of addressing it. Even though, because you want to convey that point, but the guidelines are not allowing you to write. During the closing meeting, when all of you are making a presentation, in the closing meeting, you can always say there are a few other metrics that you might like to explore. There are much better methods, or there are such organizations who make use of this. It's something that you can try out. You can share that, but you may not write it in the feedback report, but you can certainly share. These are the ways out by which you can address these questions.
Very much, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yes, please. Anybody else? Any other questions? It did not relate only to yesterday. It can be over the last 3 days. Any points? Anything that need clarification on the site visit, or it can be on the consensus, or it can be on the OPEL, whatever. Nothing? Okay. So before we go ahead with today's questions, what is now, today we are getting into day 4, the penultimate session. How comfortable are you now with the OPEL? When compared to day 2, wherein we just shared what that OPEL is, and on day 3, as well as on day 2 at the end, you try to do the exercise, you are trying to map the attributes of the SIIS MLI for the OPEL for enabler, and then yesterday you tried SIS TTCC, that is for the result OPEL. What were your pain points? And now after getting into the 4th day, how comfortable are you with the assessment tool? I'll go through the chat box later, but you can open up and you can share some points of comfort or probably discomfort on the OPEL. More clarity needed on SIS TTCC. Okay, next. Anybody else? Okay, let me go through the chat box and also clear some of the doubts. So here, Any Vandana is asking any limitation on the review year or the latest data can be shown. Now, when we say the latest data, now let's say if the assessment is happening within the next next 1 or 1.5 months, based on the current year award cycle, the year in question which they need to present, the data is for the last financial year. It is for that 1920. So 1920, 1819, 1718. So those are the 3-year data points which we will need to present. Don't try to present the data points for the current year, because now it's hardly around 3 or 4 months. So this data may not help. It is better to restrict yourself to the last financial year of 1920. That would be good enough. And when we say 3-year data, sometimes there could be a few initiatives or there could be a few parameters, because the volume of data that is coming in so very high that you may actually not need a 3-year data. In such circumstances, as an assessor, as a group, you can take your own call as to whether a 2-year data is good enough to be considered as a good indicator for going forward. So that is also a discretion that the assessment team can make use of in certain cases, though not in all of them. Where what I'm saying is, for the areas where the volume of data is significantly high, the transactions are also high, due to which you are able to come up with very clear information. Is it okay, Vandana? Was it what you are wanting to ask?
Shiva, thank you. And I had one more question.
Okay.
As I was going through this, sample report that was given to us, specifically the result area, I felt most of the data which was presented as a result could have been avoided, or probably form part of some other place in the report, like the manpower data, the skill providing data. It had nothing to do with the presentation of result.
You are right.
Where company can say present it as a part of an annexure, maybe, so that actually only the key points are reflected in the report.
You are right. I mean, many of such data, it is not a. That's where I said that it is also not a benchmark document. While the organization has done really well, and that's the reason why they also got into the 600 band, no doubt. But probably the document, especially the result section, was not, I would say, very well written. Later today, I will also try to share a few snapshots of a few other, couple of other documents as to how to go about trying to even write a good result section also. We will address that. Yeah. Next is what more clarity to be given on the SIS TTCC. Okay. Another question is on how to identify which sites to visit. Okay. Now, maybe I will throw up the question back to all of you. Maybe I would request a few of you to respond. Now, let us say you are assessing BPCL. You have gone through the overview. You know the business context of BPCL. Which sites would you go to assess? Maybe somebody can open up the mic and then share. And
some of their larger sites.
You must also say why that site is important. As an assessor, why do you think that going to that site will be very, very crucial? Yes, please, you can start. I think someone was speaking. Sorry, I think I...
No, it was my fault. I was interrupting you. Basically, we need to identify the list of their setup, overall setup, that what is the org structure, and then how they are doing at grassroots level, and then how they are administering or managing the things at either regional level or corporate level. So we can identify a sample from each of the working level, I think.
Okay, the learning over here. What, Amit, right? Or who is speaking now?
This is Vivek.
Oh, Vivek, is it? Because because I think something else was glowing over here. Sorry. Okay, Vivek, the thing is, when you're saying corporate as well as a unit, this is good. Now, this is an organization where there is also a corporate, and there are also different business lines plus also different locations as well. So in any assessment, especially these category of assessments, it is important to understand the corporate plus also the unit. So never make the mistake of only assessing the corporate and listening to them and speaking to them and then coming back. Both corporate and the unit, both of them should be assessed. And let me also give you another tip. Many assessment teams would say, हाँ हमारा corporate जो है वो मुंबई में है, हमारा plant that is somewhere in Delhi. So you can spend 2 days in the corporate and another 2 days at the unit. Don't fall for that. Because one is, there is so much of travel. You have got plenty of work to do. Today now virtual means are also available. If you would want 1 or 2 of the corporate members to be at that particular unit, you can ask the corporate guys to come over to the unit. Or if there are too many questions which you will need to understand, or if there are too many processes that are centrally controlled by the corporate, then you can spend a day at the corporate, or at least 1 or 2 assessors can go to the corporate, whereas the other 2 can still be at that particular unit. So it all depends upon the complexity of the unit, but the point is, yes, both the corporate and the unit, both of them have to be assessed. But in particular, it is more about the units which still need to get a deeper insight, because ultimately the corporate is only a custodian of the policies. The implementation will actually rest at the site. So you must make sure to go to at least some 2 or 3 sites to get a real good flair of the implementation or the deployment. So that was one point. Yes, anybody else? What other things you
And
want to
then
see?
the site selection criteria.
That's what. Let somebody else speak about the site selection criteria for BPCL. Which sites would you visit as an assessor and for what reason?
It's a pretty disintegrated, quite diversified company. So you need to visit both the refinery division as well as the other division plus the marketing offices, because then only you will get a holistic view. Like the point is to have a holistic view. So.
Okay. Anybody else would add on to what Mujtaba said? Now, if you look at the scope of the application, one is they've got a refinery, they have retail, they've got a bottling plant, and they also have maybe I think one more line of business. I forgot that. There are 3 or 4. Now, this company is what? This is where understanding the company and the key factors will become very, very important. This company is in the business of oil and gas. Since it is oil and gas, you must also try to look at, now you are assessing HR. Now, Mujtaba, one point is when you said the marketing, I would probably want you to actually discount marketing. Why? Because we are not doing a business assessment. We are doing an HR assessment. We must look at out of the employee profile, we must look at majority of the employees coming from which sector. Are they there in the refinery? Are they the ones who are there in maybe the LPG or in the bottling plant? If I am the assessor, maybe I will not go too much into the retail portion of it at all. Because retail there are very, very less, and all the retail outlets, etc., they are all maybe franchisee outlets. They are not managed by BPCL. The number of people in the retail might be very, very less. Or people who are in retail are the people who are in marketing probably. While there is nothing wrong in going to retail, I would pick up as an assessor, I would pick up a refinery, I would probably go to maybe an LPG bottling plant. Why? Because oil and gas, health and safety, that is where the value creation process mainly is happening. So considering the sector, considering the safety as well as the number of people who are working based on the employee profile, I would want to pick up. And even if I would want to go to one refinery and one bottling plant, I will not go to the same location. If Mumbai has a refinery, I will go to the refinery at Mumbai. If there is a bottling plant down south, I will ask one of our assessor colleagues to go to that bottling plant, because you will also get a different feel about the culture. Because working culture across different regions, across different locations, that may also be different. The working conditions in a refinery, the working condition in some other line of business, the requirements could be totally different. And you must also consider, not one is the HR aspect of how the employees are distributed. The second thing is you must also look at what percentage of the revenues is coming in from which business. For example, there is an emerging new business. Maybe it is not bringing in this thing, but the next wave of growth for this particular organization might be coming from that nascent vertical, which is not even contributing 5%. But it is a very strategic one. Maybe for L&D or for competency that is required, you must have a discussion with that particular unit or over a telecom or maybe over a VC, or you must go over there. So generally, how does the assessment team pick up the locations? First, they look at the employee profile. They try to understand the business. They try to look at going to the one of the oldest plants, because there are likely to be gaps. They will always go to one of the newest plants to look at how the culture is being set. So whenever you are trying to pick up the sites, you must look at culture. You must look at I would say, the relative aging of that particular plant or that facility, or the importance because of the new focus areas or the new areas that the company is going towards. All these will be a deciding factor for trying to look at the location. You as an applicant might say, and generally what applicants will do, they will always take them to the best possible location, because they know that system acha hai, process acha hai, whether the head is very, very conducive, he will explain that very, very well. You will have a textbook location to take forward to, but the assessor may not take that. So he will say, I want to go over here because of this reason, and you can't stop him. But as an assessor, you also have a role and responsibility as a part of the site visit. You cannot say that today I am at Mumbai, mujhe kal Delhi jana hai, mujhe flight book karo. That is not right. It is not about the company cannot book a flight. That is not the issue. When you are wanting to go, the site head should be available over there. People have already blocked their calendars for some other activity. They are out on their trips. They are having something else. So you can't say, because मैं 5 दिन का सुल्तान हूँ, मैं यहाँ वहाँ जहाँ भी जाऊँ मैं जा सकता हूँ. That is not the right way. Site visits always have to be planned. They may have to make safety protocols. They'll have to take certain permissions. Just because we are an assessor, we just cannot walk left, right, or center wherever we want. And also, I have one more request to all of you as applicants is, please do not show any leniency. Showing courtesy is fine. But when it comes to protocols, when it comes to health, safety, security, and the other protocols, you must not deviate from your given processes. If an assessor's vehicle needs to be checked, it must be checked. If the laptop number has to be entered in the security, he has to enter it. He might be an assessor, everything is fine. But as far as rules and the other protocols are concerned, there should not be let down in any point of time. I am 100% sure that our assessors are also very, I would say, they are mature enough to understand that they need to follow the protocols of the company, just like how, they would expect somebody else when they walk into their company to follow that. The same thing holds good for all of us. So pick up sites based on the relative importance, based on the profile, based on the business model. That is how you must try to look into. Does that answer the point, Mustafa?
Sir, that is correct, but it also robs away one major point from from the organization point of view is that there are certain strength areas, like we are looking for strengths as well as we are looking for OFIs. So and across the board, but at the same time there are certain areas which they've just dealt, let's say refineries. So they have just one or I think 2 refineries. However, the marketing is very diversified and spread all across the country and maybe abroad. So if I do a dipstick of say some sort of any initiatives or any HR initiatives, The implementation, if across the board, I would be able to gauge it. I think, I mean, this is just another point of view too, much better than when it is all spread across at multiple locations. And, you know, so let's say communication system, if I'm gauging,
Okay.
so it is onto one refinery, the communication could be very robust because it's just one place you have to just,
Very true.
give all. But
It
when
obviously will be very strong.
Yes, but at the same time, when I look at the marketing SBU, there it will be all spread all across locations. There are so many places where, and is everybody, you know, all aboard or able to decipher the top-down communication and everything. So, as in, it becomes a challenge. So I am wanting to find out these trends as well as OFIs, but it robs away the organization ability to showcase their strengths, because if I go on to the most, I mean, not to put it in that manner, but the most rural location, and then find out, you know, how good and great they are doing, there will always be, one thing which will be missing, always be missing, as in when we talk of a place like India, economy like India.
You are right. You are right. How to address that? Let me give you an answer.
Yes, sir.
When you are assessing a company like BPCL or an IOCL, or maybe it could be a company that has got more into retail, etc., wherein people are all distributed all across. In those cases, certain exceptions can be made. When I say an exception, in terms of the assessment, what happens is, in most assessments for the site visit, generally it starts with the corporate office, or probably in case if it is a standalone unit, you go over there, you discuss, you will be able to get a good feel. But in the case of a BPCL, let's say for example, retail also, there, like all of us, many of us are in north, east, southwest. BPCL has retail petrol bunks at all places. So there are many places which they also have something, the model called as a COCO. Generally in retail, it is called as company owned and company operated fuel bunks of a BPCL, etc. So you may want to walk into one of those outlets. In fact, you don't need to inform the coordinator, just for an experience. Let us say now there are 4 assessors, there are 6 assessors, all the 6 of us are from different parts of the country. Then during our consensus, we will say each one of us, let us go to one of the company owned bunks in our own places for a refilling. We will talk to the people just casually and get a flair of what this company is all about. So it is permitted, you can do that. But this is only an informal discussion. Let me tell you another point. Now, let's say I am from Bangalore. If I am an assessor as a part of this group, just like what Mustapha said, now marketing. Now, if we start the assessment and then go branch out all across, then the time will be limited. We will also be under severe duress. Instead of that, let's say Mustapha is working from Delhi and I am working from Bangalore. Both of us are assessors for BPCL. Then with the concurrence of the senior assessor, as well as then we talk to the coordinator of the company, then he'll say that, okay, Shiva will go to the marketing office of BPCL in Bangalore on next Saturday and have a small interaction with them. This is, the assessment has formally not started. That is, the site visit has formally not started. But हमारा consensus discussions हो चुका है. We are just about planning for the site visit. The site visit is planned actually after another 20 days or so. But as of now, I am going to the marketing office of BPCL in Bangalore, and Mustapha will do the same thing in Delhi. And he will speak to, the coordinator will come in, and this is a planned exercise along with the applicant coordinator. So the applicant coordinator will call whoever is the marketing face of that Delhi or here in Bangalore. He will give me an overview of what is the activity, what they are doing. Then he'll assemble the employees. Then he'll have a formal interaction with them. I will have my points. Mustapha will have my points, his points. And then we meet together during the assessment. We share our thoughts, and this becomes formally a part of the report because this is a planned engagement. So in case of multiple sites, in case of complex assessments, the team can also take a decision to visit 1 or 2 sites well in advance and have some focus group discussions and get a feel of the business. This is also allowed under the aegis of the assessment. Only thing is, this should only be after it is being planned formally with the company coordinator. We cannot just barge in straight away and move over, but it has to be a planned effort. But Mujtaba's point is very much valid. We need to get into some of the areas where the robustness is generally suspect. When I say suspect, that is because people are all distributed, diffused all across. So due to which I think it makes real good sense for us to get a flare of the percolation of the HR practices. Nothing wrong in that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yes, please. Anybody else? Any other points?
Something in my mind. Like when I was
Yeah.
going through the application document of the BPCL, what came to my mind is they have talked themselves that there are few HR challenges, which are of course scattered throughout the document. One, they have said that the high superannuation. The second, they have said is the high attrition among the youngsters. And
Correct.
also they have talked here and there about trade unionism also. And as we know, trade unionism is a challenge in this kind of industry till
True.
date.
True.
Till date. So when I pick up a site for a visit, like if I know that if it's if I feel that yes, high superannuation can be an HR challenge for BPCL, I would perhaps pick up a site, a very old site of BPCL, maybe where they're experiencing the highest number of superannuations. And for the other 2 points, like high attrition and wherever the trade unionism is very strong, can I not ask the applicant that in a way, not perhaps directly, to assess that where such things are more prevalent, which are those sites where the attrition rates are very high, which are those sites where unionism is very strong, and then accordingly plan my visit?
You can do that. Not a problem. It is permissible. You can ask for such data. You can say that we would want to visit some of the places to have a discussion with the people in the union, because the focus group discussions, the union discussions, the employee discussions, they are all there. Let us say it could be the officers cadre, or it could be the contract people cadre, or it can be even the trade union people. You can go and visit them. And applicants are a little bit dicey. They would say, I mean, can we also come along with you, etc. It all depends between the assessment team and the applicant. We always tell the applicants that please do not worry. People who are coming are also from the HR domain. They are sensitive. They won't create an IR issue by talking to the people. They also are very mature. They would understand the sensibilities. But if you want to get a real objective view of it, we would suggest that you can be away from the discussions. While yesterday I said that during the site visit, it is better that somebody can accompany the team while they are discussing. That is fine in all the others. But especially with the CEO or with the managing director and with the union, etc., it is always better to leave the assessment team on a one-to-one and trust them. Or in case if you have got some reservations, it is okay. Then the assessment team might say that, yes, no problem, you can also join. But believe me, the assessment team will also be clever. There is nothing that you can plant. There is nothing that you can plan. They also know as to how to get the answers out of it. So it is a sort of a balanced thing. But nothing wrong in going and checking those sites, Ruma. Absolutely no issue. It is well within the rules of the game.
Okay, sir. Since that is allowed, now choosing the sites based on the perspectives, as I was thinking. Now, is that a right way of looking at the issue? I should choose the sites based on these parameters. Is that right? Is that okay, sir?
See, it all depends. For example, if they don't have any history of labor unrest or an IR issue, then why is it that in the first place that you are doubting that this company may have an issue? Let me go and talk to the union. Then it can be any union, it can be any place. Or probably during the discussions, or if it has come out, if they had said that we have got some certain IR issues in such a place, if any one of the team is going over there, then you can maybe slot a discussion. But asking an explicit question saying that in which of the areas you are having an IR issue, etc., we would want to go and have a discussion over there, that may not look good. That may not be the right approach.
Definitely, sir.
Yeah. So I think those were some of the questions from the BPCL site visit. Plus, as I said, pre-planning the site visit, and in case if the site is very complex, 2 people going to one particular location, or if there is only one person in a one assessor, let us say, as I said, in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, wherever it is, I mean, going and then having a formal interaction in discussion with the applicant is acceptable. You can also do that. And while we said that the typical site visit lasts from a Monday to a Thursday or a Friday, if at all, if it is a whole organization like a BPCL or maybe a TCS, etc., then even the site visit might be a little bit staggered. It may happen in two different tranches. It could even go into 6 or 7 days. That is also absolutely fine. But at the end of the day, please remember, assessment is also about samples. We are not trying to dig the absolute truth. So it is all about those representative samples which we pick up, and in that, whatever comes over as good or not so very good, that is what really stands. So it is physically impossible, and it is not the right approach to make sure that we go to each and every place and then go for a site visit. That may not be right. Just give me a moment, please. Yes, please.
Sir, one of the approaches that again I have learned from few of the business excellence models when assessor used to come. So one of the thing, one person I still remember that mentioned is, I don't know if that's the right approach even for an assessment is. So what he used to say that, whenever he said, whenever he visited a company, so he would ask that whoever the person to guide them to the, whatever is the best place they want. I mean, their suggestion that this is the place we want to visit for, say, X parameters. So he would go there, and then he would go choose another place, which again would be basis the differentiation of the company or where exactly the processes and systems. Choose a place which again. So when he used to say that the choice given by the organization is always where the most of the best practice you can find in place. So when you go and see that sets the barometer. I mean, sets the standard. That, it says, okay, so this is the level, let's say again, taking an example of the communication system. So this is this level of communication systems, sets the standard, then you go down and see the refinery. So in case of BPCL, suppose you have seen it at their corporate center, this is the standard. Now, same standard I'm supposed to have, or, then I have a standard to compare. And then go down and see whether the same thing is also percolating down to the refineries as well or not. And it always gives a very good view as to, one organization, what are the strengths and the OFIs. I mean, I don't know if that's the right approach even to take for an assessment. But this was the approach that I still remember he shared once.
See, it all depends upon the team to team and the assessor to assessor. And we may also not know, because from what I know, in your NTPC business excellence assessments, they are, you also have your own internal assessments which are done by certain freelancers. So it all depends upon what is the mandate given to them and how is it that they have done. But if it is an external award process like CII, like a CII administered assessment, then the rules of the game might be a little bit different. Just like what I'm trying to share with you now, it might be that, and it is the prerogative of the applicant always can say that this is where we would want to take you and for this reason. But the assessors may go with it, or they may have their own logic and they may ask that I want to visit this site because of whatever are the reasons. So ultimately the decision of the assessment team will be final than what the applicant is wanting to show.
Okay, sir. Okay.
In any of the assessments, whether it is business excellence, whether it is this, the prerogative lies with the assessment team.
Okay.
Yeah. Right then. So more or less, I hope now any points on the Opel? I think that was where, but we got into the site visit. Any points on the Opel that need clarity? Is it much better? One of you wanted some clarity on that SIS TTCC. Let me try to take you through that. Yesterday, whatever you have done. So when we go to the SIS TTCC, let me open the Opel for results. Now, the Excel sheet, whatever you had the attributes. Now the elements are relevance and usability and performance. When it comes to the attributes are scope and relevance, meaning to say that there could be a few results in the BPCL case study in 6B, which you feel they should have presented, but they have not presented. Then if you give an OFI saying that these are the results which are not presented, but which are relevant from the context or because this is associated with a key process, then that becomes an OFI under the scope. But if that has been presented under scope, then it is okay. Then we don't have an OFI on that. Then when you say integrity is, as I said, we believe and trust the applicant that he has given credible data, especially in the document assessment. But when do we question or how do we assess the integrity? Let us say a company is doing its own internal survey. They have presented an ESAT of 90%. They have got 1,000 employees. I'm just taking some figure. They have got 1,000 employees. They did a e-survey, e-enabled digital survey, and out of which the hit rate was only 20%. Out of the 20%, when they collated the findings, their ESAT was 90%. Then the assessors will not take it at the face value, because neither is it reliable nor is it accurate and nor is it truly representative. Out of the 1,000, they did the response rate was only 20, and 20% is not a good representative sample. And we don't even know whether it is truly distributed population all across all cadres or not. So that is when you will get into the details. When you go into the site, if somebody is doing a survey on their own, see, when a Gallup or a Eon Hewitt or somebody does a survey, then it is a scientific instrument, well calibrated. They have the sample size. They would know as to what is it that to ask. Those are standard questions. They are able to give you the benchmarks. All that is fine. But if a company is doing its own survey, you need to look at the robustness of the tool. You also need to look into the quality of the samples, the true representation, etc. These are all some of the things that you must look into. This is where you will find OFIs on the integrity portion of it. The third one is segmentation. Now earlier, one of you were asking a question. I think Ruma was asking a question on something to do with the accidents. The data, while it is given, the data is not segmented. The overall data might look very, very good, very nice. But when you segment the data, if you ask for a segmented data of the accidents, it is quite possible that one particular site, especially a refinery or something else, might be having much more. Then that is much more dangerous. So the devil is in the detail. You must always get into segmentation, especially when you are assessing a whole organization, be it the employee data, be it the geographical, be it the different site data, etc. Unless and until you segment, you will not find opportunities for improvement. Neither will you be able to find what they are really good. Many a time the aggregate data will mask it. That is the reason the OPEL is asking you to get into the segmentation portion of it also. That is what is the SIS. Let us come to the TTCC. When you say trends, one is whichever are the parameters that are important from the HR point of view, be it coming in from leadership, strategy, L&D and all those, whether a wide range of parameters, whether have they been presented or not, and on those, how is the trend over a period of 3 years? That is what you are trying to look at, the trends. So whenever you are trying to look at the TTCC, trends, targets and comparisons, it should have already passed the test of relevance and usability. When you are looking at targets, one common mistake that all assessors do is हर एक चीज के लिए target. You may have the targets for all KPIs in your company, but as an assessor, you can't give them a blanket OFI on targets and comparisons. You should give an OFI on the targets and comparisons only for the key results. That is what the model is telling you. The model is saying that targets are set for the key results, targets are appropriate, and targets are also achieved. It is only asking for the key results. Now in BPCL, I'm just trying to draw your attention onto the BPCL strategy criteria. Now they have got those 9 visions and 9 HR teams and strategy. They are saying that they would enable their employees to realize their true potential. high performing work environment, deliver best in class HR services, and then engaged, empowered, and energized manpower, capabilities for achieving breakthrough results or agility for change. Now, out of this entire vision and strategy, I don't know why they have given something on green and CSR. Green and CSR is more of a business one. Here we are only trying to talk about the HR aspect of it. So they are saying that leadership pipeline, because very clear that 50% of the people are going to retire. So they are trying to look at leadership pipeline. So leadership pipeline is a key result. So for that, they must have a target. They must also compare themselves. It is much more easier for them. They can get data from IOCL, they can get data from HPCL, because they can get details from ONGC. All of them are PSUs. It is much easier for them to get that sort of a data from the same sector. So there are a lot of areas where they can do benchmarking, where they need to set the targets. While we are on the topic of comparisons, there is also one slide that I will take you through for the comparisons. It is there in your courseware. Let me try to take the example of NTPC itself over here. Now, whenever, let us say NTPC is applying as a whole organization, or let us say Ramagundam is applying, or maybe one of the other units in the western region is applying. First, if you are presenting, if you are applying if you are an applicant from one particular unit, you can look at what is a group average NTPC. Against that, where do you stand? If you are better than the group average, compare yourself with whoever is in the best. If you build a particular business line, if you are in thermal, if you are in nuclear, or if you are in wind, or if you are so or whatever, try to look at that and try to this thing. They are all very, very similar. So you can compare yourself with the outside external world. Then you can look at the entire power sector, because I'm sure that there would also be many power sector, consortiums as well. Like, for example, SIAM is there for automobiles, the Society for Indian Automotive Manufacturers. There is something Manufacturers Association. There is this NASCOM for software. So likewise, if you have a sectoral affiliation or an industry affiliation, look into that. If you are the best over there, compare yourself with somebody who is generic, somebody who is in best in class. But while doing your comparison and giving your data, look at the points that are there in red. Where are you? Which data are you taking for comparison? What is the dependability? What is the reliability of that source? How many data points are there? Is it really relevant to you? Because benchmarks are not very, very easy to obtain. There is this, there is the APQC benchmarking report also, wherein you get data on all parameters of the business, but obviously it comes for a huge fee, and companies pay a good fee to APQC for getting that data. You can also check that data. So there are many places where you get credible competitive intelligence and benchmarking, which you can make use of if you wish to. So this is another slide on the comparison portion of it. So Anil says you lost my audio. Not sure. 11, hardly a couple of minutes, not much. I said that you can, this is what is a logical hierarchy of comparison. So you can first compare with within the group, outside the group. Next level is outside the competition. Then if you have an industry association, you can try to look at a sectoral association. You can compare the data. Then you can move into best in class or any other generic industry. Can a sample assessor report be shared? No, because all the assessor reports are all confidential. We would have signed a confidentiality agreement. So generally assessor reports are not shared. So Indranil, sorry, we have not taken your questions, and also Priyanka, any specific points? I think Mehul had put it up. In case if there are any specific points, please do share with us, not a problem.
Shiva, all clear. I had this doubt on comparisons, which you explained clearly. Because in the BPCL report, when I was doing the exercise yesterday, a lot of times there was this benchmarking, comparisons, etc. They were all missing. So I was
Yes.
wondering how will it affect the results, or because the only place I found it was in the I think PAT, the impact of 8,000.
That was only on the
business.
financial results, the comparison
Yes,
given.
correct. Only
Let
at
me-
that time they had compared. So I was a little confused that time.
Let me try to connect your question to what Ruma was also asking in the morning on the accidents. Now, one of the aspiration of this company, which they have given as a part of the purpose, vision, culture, values, etc. They also said that they are wanting to be a role model company in the areas of health and safety. Now, if this company has formally said that they are wanting to be a role model, then they must compare themselves externally with the best-in-class companies, for which there is no data. They should have compared themselves with the accident rate of probably a ONGC or probably with a Shell or with an IOCL. You don't find that data. So even in 6B, you can say, and the key factor is what? This is where you must use a key factor. The key factor is global role model in health and safety. You can say while the company has got an aspiration to be a global benchmark in the area of health and safety, the data, the lead indicators associated with the number of accidents, etc., are not presented both with domestic as well as with some of the other aspirational ones in which they are wanting to benchmark. That can be a very, very strong OFI to hit them. Because the key factor is saying they themselves have said they want to be a role model, but they're not even comparing themselves with their own internal other state PSU. So where is the question of international ones? They could have compared themselves with the British Petroleum. They could have compared themselves with the Shell, which they have not done. So that becomes a very strong OFI for us. Right? Yes, please. Anything else? Let's go ahead then. If there are no questions, so I hope the Opel for the results and enablers were very clear. So with this, we will get into what's the time now. The time is around 11:20. Let me just see whether are there any ancillary slides, because we need to break in the next 10 minutes, or else we may have a delayed break.
Shiva, can we share the Bosch one report with them? We can, because Bosch did give us permission. So if they want to have a look for a detailed one, so we can share the Bosch application document with them.
Sure. The next 10 minutes, maybe I will also share that document as well. Just
Yes.
give me a moment.
So they can refer to that also in case they want to, go have a deeper look of application document.
Certainly,
Because
certainly.
BPCL was much easier. So Bosch will be having a very, very, good representation also.
Sure. So let me just open up the Bosch report. Okay, so this is a position report of Bosch. As we said, there is nothing called as an ideal position report, but you will find certain differences between the BPCL report vis-a-vis this position report. Let me try to dwell on what are some of the things that are a little bit different in this, by which you will be able to probably look at it. Now, this is what is the employee segmentation, which is written much better. Now, this company had applied as a whole, so they have got so many different locations. So they have given the employee profile of all the different ones. Like they say that they have 1,800 in Bangalore, they have got 1,800 in Nasik, they have got 1,069 in Jaipur. Each one of them has got a different business line. So you can, as a part of the site visit, you could pick up one or two different business lines. One of them can be in gasoline, one of them can be in diesel, one can be in north, one can be in south. They have also, when you're wanting to pick up, you can also look at what is the average age. The average age, if you look at, is very, very high in the Bangalore plant. maybe you can pick up one very young plant. There is one young plant over here where the average age is only somewhere around 24 or so. So if you're looking at here, it is 44. So if you are wanting to assess culture, this will be good. You can pick up one plant where the average age is low, where it is also high, and then that is how you can try to decide where you would want to go. So this is a good way of trying to write the org profile, wherein the people data is very clearly given, because the focus is an HR excellence assessment. They're also saying that now when you look at these people, they say that more than 85% of the people are people who are graduates. So it means that you are getting into a company where the relative, I would say, the intelligence, I would say the literacy levels are extremely high. So the quality of the initiatives, whatever they take, etc., could be much better. So anyway, this is what is their the HR excellence framework. They say that this is their HR house of quality, wherein HR aims to be a good service provider as well as a business partner as well as a center of expertise, so that they focus on L&D, their business partners, they focus very clearly on the business, and also HR is someone which they aim to make it as a very, very friendly department. Then what else? They have also given certain business scenarios. They are also saying that they help their people to have the element of something called as a startup culture, so which also encourages them into an entrepreneurial mode. That is something. And what else? There is something on leadership of the HR organization. There are a few pictures of what they are trying to do. They do a culture audit. All this is there as a part of the HR. Let us get into strategy, which is more interesting. And I will also try to show something on the results, which might be more interesting and important for you, since many of you are also applicants this year. So this is the HR portion of it. This is criterion 2. So when you are getting into criterion 2, yes, they start off with how is it that they're trying to do their HR strategy workshop, and they have given a sample of one business as to how they do. So the point over here is they have, while this is very generic, this is very specific, they might explain a sample of how they do it, and they say that if this is a process in whichever place you go, wherever you go across Bosch, across different locations, you will find the process is very, very similar. That is the point what they are trying to say. So they have given how is their strategy management process. What is the strategy? How do they pick up the strategic intent? How do they pick up the signals from the external environment for trying to create a strategy for their white-collared employees as well as their blue-collared employees? This what is their strategy management calendar. And then similar to BPCL, NHRD and the other things, they've all given that. They also say how do they listen to the voice of their employees, and what are, now many of you are asking how to show the E&L, right? Now look at this E&L. They're saying that what are some of the things, what are some of the changes, and what are some of the impacts, what they have been able to make. And this is what comes out of a very mature organization. They would say in this strategy, what are the changes that they have made? What are the new points? What is it that they have been able to bring in? Specific to the divisional HR BSc, what are some of the new changes, whatever they have brought in? So these are the ones that will tell us the E&L portion of it. And also why this document is also a little bit good is Bosch is also one of the largest practitioners of business excellence, and that's also one of the reasons as to why this company is also able to bring out maybe a much sharper document. Then if you look at, they are also trying to talk about the risk management. So look at this, how the risk management has been done. Of course, you may not be able to read anything, but at least the visual very clearly tells you that the risk management tries to look at what are the different quadrants, what is green, what is yellow, which they always need to keep an eye on, what is it that is red. So they have listed down close to around 25 risks, which have been split into red, yellow and green, and based on which they also take care of the exigencies, or they try to get into that risk mitigation through this heat map. So they have also given what is the learning and improvement. Look at this. They said that strategy management benchmarking with Tata Motors. So they said that they did that in 2006. Then later, they said that our strategy management process was not properly aligned with the business process management. So they said they have also made a few other changes over there. Then they put on that 3-pillar approach just now, whatever we saw. So likewise, they have also tried to share what are the changes in the HR strategy, what are the improvements in the HR strategy, which they have done over a period of time. Then there is something on their talent management framework. Few pictures of that. See, the BPCL report, the results are not all that great. Let me try to take you through the results section in this. You will be able to see as to how is it that they have done a good job out of this. Now look at this result criterion, 6A, employee perception. They are saying that what is the employee satisfaction overall over the last 4 years, and how does it compare with somebody who is best in class? BIC is best in class. And benchmark 3.1 and 3.2 is 3.1 is Bosch Group Germany, and benchmark 3 is one of their other units in India. Now, one of the point is, I don't know, it may not be right for us to comment. It is very difficult to, in HR, especially to compare your relative employee satisfaction score with something of a plant in Germany, etc., because that may not hold good. Because culture in Germany and culture in India is different. The working styles may be different. In an operational excellence assessment, it is fine. But in an HR excellence assessment, it might be tough trying to compare your performance with one of the best performing plants outside. But if they have found value, there is nothing wrong. But what I'm saying is, as an assessor, you need to be careful if trying to say that, let me compare my ESAT with, let's say Maruti says, I will compare my employee satisfaction with that of Suzuki in Japan. Honestly, it may not gel. Whereas you can say takt time for a car produced in Suzuki, Japan versus in Gurgaon, fair enough, because processes, systems, everything is fine. It is the same. But in people, it's a little bit tough. So they have given, this is one of the good things, take away from this is they are comparing their performance with the best in class as well as their own internal one. And look at this, when they say best in class from a local company, best in class from SS Feedback Consulting, which is a good company in Bangalore, which does quite a lot of ESAT surveys for many large organizations. So they are saying that with the best of best, we are only around 6 points low, which is a fair representation also. And then what else? Obviously, they have given data on the leadership, again on communication, working conditions. But what you are seeing over here is they have given data from 2005. Maybe this is not required. 2005 is history. Many of the people who are there might have already retired. The initiatives today may not have anything to do. Ideally, the last 3 years is good enough, or if you want some continuity, you can share a 4-year data. But trying to share data from 2005 may not be pertinent, may not be required. That is also the reason why I said there is nothing called as a benchmark document. There is something good, there is something not so very good. So don't get confused by any of the reports. Please do your own report, that is the best. So here, if I am trying to take a OFI in this report, giving data from 2005 is no good. Had you cut this down by half, you could have given much more data. In a sheet, you could have given at least around 9 parameters. So much of space is wasted by giving data from 2005, which is not required. So accident rates, severity, unplanned absenteeism, and then staff turnover rate, some of the improvement projects in the administration side, not in the core operation side, number of employee coverage. Now, earlier, I think one of you were talking about the quality of the metrics. Now, this is a good case of quality of the metrics. Is there a better way of measuring? Now, what does this say here? It says number of employees covered in some particular sessions. They have given some number, 1658 to 1473. How good is this KPI? What is your point of view on this? Good, bad, ugly? What does it mean? Can you open up the mic and then share your view on this? Is
Doesn't
this
convey anything, maybe as a percentage of total employees, if they could have given the percentage of employees covered, maybe that will be a better way of representing.
You are absolutely right. This metric really doesn't convey anything. If you say that 80% of my people were covered in this particular sessions, it would have made some sense. If you are saying 1658 and next year 1473 and my target itself was so much, really this does not really mean much to us. That is where the quality of the metric is extremely important. Whether is it relevant, whether is it usable from a strategic perspective, that is what really we need to look at. Good point. There are many such things. For example, it says 2.14 is the number of suggestions per employee. Maybe because if this organization has applied as a corporate, then it might be good. I think here it was only one unit which had applied. I don't think it was the entire unit of Bosch. I'm not very sure with respect to the scope of the assessment. But then when you're giving such data, one of the better ways of trying to give this is in the same bar graph, you segment this and you can give the data across different locations or across different geographies or across business lines. That makes much more sense. Just trying to give one single data point really does not help. Here, of course, they have also tried to share some data with many of their other plants also. Lead time, leaders participation. Now here also, when it says leaders participation in continuous improvement activities, the numbers will not really tell us any this thing. If it is in terms of a percentage, then that would have been a better metric for us to look at the involvement percentage of the leadership. So that's where in each and every document, you will find a good, bad, ugly. So you will need to take the best. One of the other good things about this particular report when compared to the BPCL one is, this is also good. Whenever you are giving, you should always make a legend. Higher the better, lower the better. What is it? Because it all depends upon what sort of an indicator and how is it that you are tracking within your own organization. It might be a little bit different. So that's about, this report. And few other things. Let me just quickly jump to the enablers. Don't try to give photographs like this. It is of really no importance whatsoever. Can you read anything? You can't make out anything out of it. Never ever put such things. It really, you are only wasting pages, and the assessor is also not clear as to what to make out of this. Never give screenshots of your ERP or HRMS dashboard which is not visible. Now this figure 1.8 is a waste. You just cannot understand anything out of this. No point. Give something that is really of significance where the assessor is able to make some at least concrete some points out of it. Like for example, here this is at least much better. Like here a culture audit is given. At least what are the components of the culture audit? What are the building blocks of that? And once you have given a picture or a visual, don't try to write the same thing again. And also we have one weakness. As a culture, it is more for us as Indians as culture has more something like culture. We give a schematic diagram and we again explain that in a flow chart, or we try to write about it. Don't do that. This is already self-explanatory, good enough. So use thematic diagrams, use process flow diagrams, etc. But do not try to write the same thing if it is already self-explanatory. Like for example, even this passion to move, something is given. This is only a waste of space. This really does not convey anything. So don't give visuals which do not offer any insights. Do not try to give screenshots, etc. It may not help. Whatever information you are going to give, it should really help. Like for example, here, this leadership evaluation tool, or what is the organization change, what is the learning and improvement. These are all real good things that you need to pick up. Revision of the education reimbursement policy, maybe some highlights of this. These are some things that are good. Communication matrix is a waste. You just cannot make out anything from this. Classical waste of space. So these are some do's and don'ts. That's where we said that there is nothing called as an ideal position report. You need to prepare your own, and that's already the best way of trying to go ahead. So we are at 11:35 now. Time for a break. Take a break. Come back at 11:45. At 11:45, we will go through. Now, yesterday we have completed the enabler criteria. I will run through the enabler criteria quickly. Whatever are the main points, whatever we discussed yesterday, and I will help you to do the scoring. Then also some inputs on the quality of the activity, what you have done for the results, and then the scoring on the results will be for tomorrow. So we come back 10 minutes from now.